We will now open for questions, and let me turn to the right. Mr. Henry.
Yes, I have a lot of questions. Let's start on page 6 of the Equity Audit report. I'm a big data guy, so I know data. Data can be skewed any way you want to, and it looks like the way they momentum skew this data makes it look like they cherry-picked the data very poorly. It says black students are less than 20% of the population of Cy-Fair, but make up 40% of the students receiving in-school suspensions. If I go back to the data, which we're going to talk a little bit later as well about the reports, I think we have another report as well, Mr. Jackson, correct, about police reports and other things as well in the agenda. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I believe we only have, I think, 18 reports in there as far as it alluded to that high level of actually things. But if I go back to the actual numbers of the report, I show on here that of the black students, only 5,134 students of black and only 2,006, or 4% of the entire black population, have actually been on intuition in-school suspensions. So that number looks big and scary, 55%, but really that's not a big number if you look at the total population of the school district. So let's put that in perspective to the public. That's not a big number at all. In fact, just to give you perspective, I went to Houston ISD. Houston ISD is put in this report as a glowing example, something we should look at. Houston ISD, they have 35% are actually put on in-school suspension. Pretty bad, considering the school is majority black. I would like to know beyond that, do we ever interview the parents involved in these in-school suspensions? Do we ever interview the kids, the teachers, to find out why these kids were actually involved in in-school suspensions? Probably not. Do we ever involve the opposing parents, the kids involved in that? To why they're actually involved, the systemic problem of why they're being actually involved in these in-school suspensions. Because looking at bare numbers, that tells us nothing. We have to find the systemic problem of why these kids are getting involved in problems one after the other after the other. Just kind of like we do with reading with Dr. Messina, right? Why are they having reading problems, or why are they having problems in math? So we have to look beyond the raw numbers to understand the why. So I think this pile of rubbish we have here, quite frankly, is they cherry-pick the numbers. Okay, let's go to page 25 of this report. I'm sorry for the audience yelling you to look at this. Page 25, it says you mentioned Austin ISD, and I'm not saying you, Austin ISD and Houston ISD are shining examples. Yet Houston ISD is involved in a huge scandal. In fact, one of their trustees is now in jail. Their COO is under indictment. District's about to be taken over by the state. In fact, there are actually people leaving in droves. In Austin ISD, in fact, our chief of police, which I was actually just involved with last month, helped an officer, was actually choking, and we gave an award to. He told me he left there a couple years ago because people were leaving because of the policies of Austin ISD. And Millennium gave them some great examples of diversity and inclusion there. Not doing them so well. 30% of their population is actually leaving because of policies there. Not a good examples, I think, in this report. Natalie, let me ask you a question. You used to work for HISD, correct? Last 5 years, has performance gone up or down of HISD? Up or down? Down. In fact, reading reports been going down year over year. Let's talk about the D&I stuff as well. I did some research online. This is from the Oregon Association of Scholars. The high cost of diversity and bureaucracy of Oregon public schools, which is what the Millennium is recommending, by the way, which is to open up a associate superintendent of diversity and inclusion, which is I guess if you look at the total cost of that, it's going to be around $175, fully loaded person. Add a staff of secretaries and added staff of other people there. We're probably looking at another, I don't know, $500,000. Where's that going to come from? What are we going to pay for that? I just had a conversation with a lady in the audience last the other week, taking books out of the library. And how are we going to pay for a $7.84 book? But yet we want to put more people in the administration office? Let's talk about this. University of Oregon, PSU, Oregon State, talking about $218,000 for some D&I. $1.5 million in staff costs, overrun. Taxpayers are being costed this overrun cost, over and over again, and yet the numbers of Oregon universities are going down over and over again. SATs are going down. Terrible, awful. I'd like to also look at page 11, if you would, please. Page 11 of the DNI report. Not sure this is supposed to get out, but unfortunately it did. I was very disappointed to learn that our administration put forth a speaker during the summer PD that talked about white privilege. Very disappointed. If this is true, Dr. Henry, I would like an investigation into this. Why we would put forth a speaker that putting forth in front of our teachers white privilege, and then, according to this report, teachers were walking out because they were embarrassed for their own race. And you shamed them in this PD. If this is true, Dr. Henry, I would like you to investigate this, why we did this, who did this, why it cost, who cost it, and we should be held accountable. And quite frankly, someone should be fired for this. This is unacceptable. It's now a law in Texas. We can't do this under SB 3, the new law that's in place, but that's unacceptable. I've heard more stories around and around about this, but we cannot do this to our teachers. We cannot subject them to making them feel bad because of who they are as a race. I would like you to look in that, Dr. Henry, please. I'm not sure about this audit report was put forth to our board members, but I don't like it. It doesn't match what I was told it was going to be in the first place. I talked to a couple of board members previously, and the intention I was told in the first place was this was going to look at every single school member, school person within our district and say, what is this district standard for a kiddo in our district? Or do they go to Farney Elementary, or they go to a different school on a different side of the school? And do they have the right computer? Do they have the right part of their education? Are they getting all the right school supplies? Do they have the right teacher in place? Because we talk about opportunity for all. I don't like that. I would rather say, what is the district standard across the board? I'll give you for instance, let me give you an analogy. I go buy a car. I'm going to go buy me, say, a Ford Mustang. I'm going to go to one dealership here, and I go to another dealership here. What is the standard I'm going to get from that car? Does it have roll-up windows? I'm kind of dating myself now, or does it have electronic windows? What is the standard for that car I'm going to get? And making sure I can look at that analogy across the board. And that's what the standard should be for every kid within our district. I want to make sure where that kid is black, brown, white, or whatever he is, whether his socioeconomic level is really high, really low, he gets the same level of education. And that's not what this report came across. That's not what it did at all. And I know I talked to another board member, I'm not going to call that person out, but that's not what this report did at all. And I'm ashamed that we didn't do that. It failed. Instead, this looks at trying to look at a bloated D&I office to include more overpaid people that don't share our community values and take away critical programs out of the pocketbooks of our own kids and our teachers. My mom was a teacher for 40 years. And every year she'd come home and talk about how much money she spent on her own classroom because, quite frankly, we don't pay enough money for stuff that goes in the classroom. I remember my kids were in school at Farney. We had to do a drive because we couldn't afford paper, copy paper. We had to go supply copy paper for the school kids in school. And I know teachers are hurting every day. You four voted for this thing. I didn't vote for this. Natalie didn't vote for this. Lucas didn't vote for this. It's on y'all, quite frankly, this heap of junk that we paid for. The committee elected us 3 trustees because of one thing, because they saw there was a problem with this board that we had, quite frankly. A lot of it became because of the equity thing, which we're going to talk about later, which was this, and I know we've been talked about earlier, but this whole proclamation y'all came out with, which really denigrated the entire community. And the most people ever voted in an election came out, 34,000 people, and voted us in. I would suggest that we cut bait and move on from this thing. I would suggest that we don't approve anything in this, quite frankly, at all. We have an election, you'll have an election in 2 years, and I hope you do the right thing, because quite frankly, it's not on me, it's on y'all, what y'all do. I would, again, suggest making this opportunity for all differently. I'd also like to point out something which I forgot as well on here. You mentioned talking about people that look like us and things, which I would like to remind people. Our teachers are our most important asset within our district. I love our teachers. I love what they do for us every day. My kiddo loves her teachers. But I looked online, and you were talking earlier about people that look like us. And we have such a hard time getting teachers. I know it's such a hard job. You'll have a hard job getting teachers. Very hard. People just don't want to be teachers anymore, and I get that. It's hard. But Sci-Fair has, what, 13% black teachers. I know you mentioned it earlier. Do you know what the statewide average is for black teachers?
Not at this moment, sir.
10%.
We can get that information.
10%. I looked it up. The statewide average for black teachers is 10%. Houston ISD, which I'll use as a shine example, you know what their average number of percentage of black teachers is? 36%. I looked that up. You know what their dropout rate is? 4%. I don't want to be 4%. I don't want to be HISD. I want to be a shine example. I want to be the district standard. I want to be the place, the premium place where people go to be. And quite frankly, we have a limited budget with limited resources. We have a great place, and let's don't mess it up for everyone else. I apologize if I'm passionate about this, but it means a lot to me because I love the teachers of the district, and we got to keep them here. We got to keep them engaged, and teachers are leaving in droves for other politicians. I looked at our numbers the other day, and it was like 30% of our teachers, correct me if I'm wrong, I may be wrong on this, I'm sometimes wrong, but 30% of our teachers are 15 years or over in tenure. That's a large number of teachers that could turn over here very soon. That concerns me. It's the same thing I face in my industry in technology. We have an aging problem. People are aging out. And so we got to be very careful what we do here going forward. I apologize if I'm passionate, but thank you very much for your time.
Did you have any questions, Mr. Henry?
I asked my questions, and I don't think she had all the answers, but I don't think the people that answer the questions are actually here because she didn't create the report. You're just presenting them.
Thank you for recognizing that.
And so my frustration was not at you. My frustration was at the people who created this report. So maybe you can get those
None
answers. I hope you can get those answers for me back.
So can you go over the questions?
I will get those in writing. How about that before the next meeting, and I'll get those to you. Would that be appropriate?
Absolutely. Dr. Blassington.